7 out of 10 is average. This may come as controversial to many, and rightfully so. In general, we use average to denote something of standard quality, and we represent that numerically with the median of a set. So on a 10-point scale, 5 should be average, right? After all, even my anime list says that 5 is average. Well, in today's video, I would like to challenge that, and instead argue that 7 is average. 5 is average. You rate them a 7 because you don't know what average is. End of story. Most people rate based on the average being 7, when they should rate based on 5 being average. I understand what the word means colloquially, but it's based on a misinterpretation of its meaning. To begin my argument, let's consider why someone might think that saying 7 is average is wrong. The assumption here is that the word average has a fixed meaning, and that is represented on a 10-point scale by the number 5. On this view, the meaning of a word is prescriptive. The idea is that at some point during its origin, a word is assigned a meaning, and it is this meaning that every correct instance of the term must use. Applying this to our current case, this means that you can only say that the claim 7 is average is wrong if, at its inception, it was assigned or at least associated with the number 5. However, if we look back at its history, what we find is something completely different. The English word average dates back to the late 15th century, where it was used to refer to a, quote, duty payable by the owner of goods to be shipped. This poses a serious problem to the theory that meaning is prescriptive. How can the meaning of a word change if any use of the term outside of its prescribed meaning is wrong? Wouldn't this imply that our current usage of the word average is wrong? After all, it goes against its originally prescribed meaning. Indeed, this is a bigger problem for the English language at large. A quick history lesson will reveal that the words we use today meant very different things in the past. For example, nice was not always used to describe someone pleasant, but rather someone ignorant. Similarly, awful was not used to describe something bad, but something that commanded profound respect, something that was full of awe. Does this mean that every time I call someone nice with the intentions of communicating that they are pleasant, I am wrong? Well, on this view of meaning, yes. However, something seems off about this analysis of language. How could it be that I'm using the word nice wrong if almost everyone uses it in a similar way, even if it is different from its original meaning? To answer this, I will present an alternative view of meaning, a view that suggests meaning is descriptive, not prescriptive. The theory is simple. The meaning of a word is its use in the language. Now, this isn't to say you could use a word to mean whatever the hell you want and suddenly it takes on that meaning. Rather, the point is this. The meaning of a word consists in its regular usage, with an emphasis on regular. This is why we are not wrong to use nice to mean pleasant. If the meaning of a word consists in its regular usage, and people regularly use nice to mean pleasant, then I am also correct to use nice to mean pleasant, despite that differing from its originally prescribed meaning. So that's cool and all, but what does any of this have to do with average meaning 7? Well, it has everything to do with it. If we accept that meaning is descriptive, and I see no reason not to, then however average is used regularly is its meaning. And as it turns out, Sword Art Online is an average anime, 7 out of 10. 7 equals average. Demon Slayer is an aggressively average anime, a light 7. 7 is pretty average though. The anime aren't anything special. Average being 7. It seems that there is some basis for claiming that average is used to describe something that is rated 7 out of 10. Not only are there countless instances of it being used this way, but many people seem to recognize this too. Most people, at least in my experience, rate based on average being 7. My anime list scores are stupid because you have a user base that rates everything a 10 and their average is a 7 out of 10. Just think of how many people have claimed that Demon Slayer is mid or average, yet gave it a 7. This isn't uncommon, and whether they know it or not, they're endorsing a view that 7 is average. Now, at this point in the argument, you might be thinking to yourself, well, doofy, average is a mathematical term that's used regularly to denote the sum of a set divided by how many numbers are in the set. So, on a 10-point scale, that would be 5. Well, 5.5, but let's ignore that for now. To that I say yes. Yes, you are correct that in mathematics, the average of a 10-point scale would be 5. However, this isn't mathematics. This is evaluation. This objection only works if we assume that meaning is univocal, or that words can only have a single meaning. But this isn't even true in mathematics. Average can denote either the mean, median, or mode, which are 3 distinct meanings. My bigger point is not just that meaning isn't univocal, but that language is context sensitive. The meaning of a word changes depending on what context it is used in. Consider the word substance. In chemistry, it simply means a particular kind of matter with uniform properties. But in philosophy, it means that which underlies change. These are 2 completely distinct meanings, yet both are valid in their own context. With respect to our current case, this allows us to maintain the mathematical definition in its context, and the evaluative definition in this context. So, to summarize, 7 out of 10 is average because the meaning of a word is defined by how it is regularly used in a certain context. And as we've seen, average is very much used to denote 7 out of 10. Now, if you're like me, you will find this conclusion troubling. Why? Because if we continue to use the 10-point scale, and 7 is the average, then we need to explain 1 to 6 as varying degrees of less than average, with 8 to 10 as the only degrees above average. This forces us to fit every anime we consider above average into only 3 whole numbers, which seems stifling. Simultaneously, this overwhelms us with too many degrees of less than average. However, there might be a way around this, and indeed, a way that explains why people use average to mean 7. My theory is that while people believe they use a 10-point scale, mentally, they only rate anime on a 5-point scale, starting from 5 and ending with 10. This is supported by the fact that many people rarely rate things below a 5, unless of course they're trying to make a particularly strong statement about something, but let's push that aside for the time being. Just look at the AniLists or My Anime List pages of some of your mutuals and count how many people have more than a handful of series below 5. I promise you, there won't be many. Now, the keenest of you probably already realize that this 5-point scale I'm describing is functionally the same as a 10-point scale. In fact, if we translated each number accordingly, then 7 on the 5-point scale would be the same as 5 on the 10-point scale. This brings me to perhaps my biggest point. Regardless of whether you define average as 5 or 7, the fact remains that both meanings are attempting to express the same sentiment, which brings us back to the beginning of this video. Average means something of standard quality. So whether you use a 10-point scale and identify average with 5, or implicitly use a 5-point scale and identify average with 7, you are nevertheless communicating the same point. And so whether we go with one or the other is ultimately not a big deal. My name is Doofy, and if you like this video, you might also be interested in some of my other philosophical discussions, which you can find in the suggested playlist. Don't forget to like the video, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more videos like this one. Shout out to Dark Josh for your patronage. If you wish to join him, you can find my Patreon in the description, along with my Twitter, Discord, TikTok, AniList, and anything else Doofy related. But until next time, peace and love, baby.